The rain didn't just fall in the city, it drowned it. From the 54th floor of the Silver-Tongued Tower, the droplets looked like static on a television screen. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, my reflection a pale ghost against the dark mahogany of my desk. Behind me, the air smelled of expensive copper and metallic blood. Damien was slumped against the mahogany, his chest heaving. His custom-tailored charcoal suit, the one I'd bought him for our 6-month anniversary, was ruined, soaked through with a spreading crimson stain. His fingers, usually so steady when they traced the line of my jaw, were trembling as they clutched his side. "Is the data worth it, Damien?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. I had practiced being a CEO long before I had to practice being a widow of a ghost relationship. Was any of it real? The Hamptons? The way you looked at me when the sun hit the water? Or was I just a line of code you needed to crack? He didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on my monitor. The blue glow of the progress bar illuminated his pale face. 92%. Deleting. He had sacrificed everything to reach that keyboard. He thought he was erasing the evidence that would bury his handlers. He thought he was winning. To understand how the man I loved ended up with a gun to his chest in my office, you have to see how he slipped into my life, and how I made sure he never slipped out. 6 months ago, my life was a fortress. I was the ice queen of Silicon Alley. After my father died in that horrific accident 10 years ago, I didn't just build a company. I built a suit of armor made of fiber optics and venture capital. I'd created Prism, a data encryption software so advanced it was rumored to be unhackable. It was my father's legacy, the work he was doing before his car went over that bridge. I'd spent a decade refining it, obsessed with the idea that if I could protect information, I could protect people. I'd raised my walls higher than my skyscraper. Then came the Midsummer Gala. I was surrounded by sharks in tuxedos, investors who smelled blood because I refused to sell. One man, Julian Vane, had cornered me near the balcony. His breath smelled of stale scotch and entitlement. "You're playing a dangerous game, Zara," Vane had hissed, his hand gripping my wrist just a bit too tight. "Prism belongs in the hands of people who know how to use power, not a girl playing dress-up in her daddy's chair." "My father's chair fits me just fine, Julian," I snapped, trying to pull away. "Does it? Because chairs can be kicked out from under you." That's when Damien appeared. He didn't charge in like a brawler. He simply stepped between us, a glass of sparkling water in one hand and a calm, terrifyingly cool smile on his face. "I believe the lady expressed her lack of interest, Julian," Damien said. His voice was like velvet over gravel. Vane scoffed. "And who are you?" "Someone who knows that harassing the hostess is a quick way to lose your invitation to every board in this city." He didn't raise his voice, but Vane recoiled as if he'd been slapped. When Vane slunk away, Damien turned to me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He knew I was. He just placed a hand on my lower back, a touch so light it was almost a question. "He's a relic," Damien whispered. "You're the future. Don't let the ghosts of the past ruin your champagne." That spark? It wasn't just attraction. It was the feeling of a shield finally being lowered. For the next month, Damien was a phantom of coincidence. I'd go to my favourite hole-in-the-wall coffee shop at 6:15 a.m, and there he'd be, leaning against the counter. "Black coffee, no sugar?" he'd ask, handing me a cup before I could even order. "How did you know?" I asked, amused. "I pay attention," he said. "It's a lost art." We shared the same obscure tastes. We both loved 1950s jazz and 2020s synthwave. We both preferred late-night drives through the industrial districts to 5-star resorts. He called us soulmates. I called it a miracle. One stormy Tuesday, the sky opened up. I was leaving the office late, exhausted, my umbrella snapped by the wind. I stood under the awning, shivering. Suddenly, a coat was draped over my shoulders. "I told you I'd look after you," Damien said, holding a wide black umbrella over us. He walked me home, the rain drumming a rhythmic beat against the fabric. At my door, I invited him in for wine. As I went to the kitchen to grab the corkscrew, dreaming of a future where I wasn't alone in this massive penthouse, I heard a faint click from the living room. I thought it was just the heater. In reality, Damien was under my desk, his fingers moving with surgical precision as he planted a high-frequency tracking device. He wasn't falling in love, he was mapping the perimeter of my empire. The breaking point, the moment I gave him my soul, was the 10th anniversary of my father's death. I was a wreck. I had spent the morning looking at old photos. The only thing I had ever wanted back from the crash was my father's gold Patek Philippe watch. It had been his father's. It was lost in the wreckage, likely stolen by a first responder or buried in the mud of the riverbank. Damien came over that night with a small, velvet-lined box. "I know today is hard," he said softly. "I did some digging. I spent the last few months contacting salvage finders and police auctions from the tri-state area." I opened the box. My breath hitched. There it was, the scratched gold face, the worn leather strap. It still smelled faintly of his old cologne. I collapsed into Damien's arms, sobbing into his chest. How? How did you find it?" "I'd do anything to bring back a piece of your heart, Zara," he whispered. "I wore that watch every day. I wore it during secret board meetings. I wore it when I took encrypted calls from government whistleblowers. I wore it while I whispered my deepest fears to Damien in the dark." What I didn't know was that his handlers, the corrupt cabal led by Julian Vane, had pulled that watch from a confidential evidence locker years ago. They hadn't found it. They had weaponized it. Inside the casing was a microphone the size of a grain of rice. Damien wasn't just my boyfriend. He was a human recorder, transmitting my father's legacy directly to the men who killed him. The facade began to crumble during a shower. Damien had left his phone on the nightstand. It buzzed, a series of rapid-fire texts. Usually I respected his privacy, but a gut feeling, a cold instinct that had kept me alive in business, took over. I looked. Unknown. Time's up. The client is losing patience. Get the Prism drive by midnight, or we kill her and take it from the vault. My blood turned to ice. I looked at the bathroom door. I could hear the water running, hear Damien humming a tune we both loved. My hero was a traitor. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I put the phone back exactly where it was. That night, Damien held me more fiercely than ever. He kissed my forehead with a desperation that looked like passion, but I knew it was a goodbye. I pretended to sleep, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. At 3 a.m, he slipped out of bed. I watched through narrowed eyes as he went to the bookshelf. He pulled down a childhood photo of me and my dad. He knew, I had told him once, that the master Prism drive was hidden in the frame's backing. He stared at the drive in his hand. For a split second, I saw his shoulders slump. Regret? Maybe. But then he tucked it into his pocket and vanished into the night. The next morning, I didn't call the police. I went to work. I sat in my 54th floor office and I waited. I had been one step ahead for weeks. Ever since I'd noticed a strange frequency jump on my office's internal sweep, I'd known the watch was bugged. I'd been feeding the microphone simulated data for a month. When Damien arrived at the office that afternoon, he looked haggard. He tried to act normal, but the air was thick with the scent of an ending. "You look tired, Damien," I said, spinning my chair around. "Just a long night, Zara," he said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "The drive you took last night, the one you gave to Julian Vane at the docks an hour ago, it wasn't the Prism files." He froze. The colour drained from his face. "Zara, what are you talking about?" "It was a Trojan horse," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. The moment that drive was plugged into Vane's mainframe, it didn't upload my data. It downloaded theirs. Every bribe, every murder, every offshore account. And then It pinged the FBI with their exact GPS coordinates. Outside, even from this height, we heard the faint rising wail of sirens. Damien lunged for the computer, desperate to stop the deletion of the files he'd been sent here to destroy. That's when my security team moved in. There was a struggle in the hallway, shots fired, and Damien, ever the survivor, managed to stumble into my office, clutching his side. "I did it to keep you alive," he rasped, his back against my desk. "Vain! He was going to kill you the moment he realized he couldn't buy you. I took the job to stay close, to protect you from the inside." "Is that what you call this?" I gestured to the room, to the ruined suit, to the lies. "You had 1,000 chances to tell me the truth. You chose to play the hero while you were the villain's shadow." The progress bar hit 100%. "It's over, Damien. The shadow client is in handcuffs. Julian Vane is currently being read his rights. And you—" I stepped closer, looking into the eyes that had once made me feel safe. "You're just a ghost I'm finally exorcising." The doors burst open. Federal agents flooded the room. As they pulled him up, his blood leaving a streak on my pristine desk, I leaned into his ear. "You wanted my father's data?" I whispered. "You got his justice instead." 3 months later, I found myself in a place that smelled of industrial floor cleaner and broken promises. The glass partition at the state penitentiary was thick, designed to keep the predators in and the prey out. But as I sat down, I realized the roles had permanently flipped. Damien was led in by a guard. The kind, attentive eyes were bloodshot and sunken. He picked up the phone. His hand, once so steady when he played his role, was shaking. "Sarah," he whispered. The velvet was gone from his voice. It was just gravel now. "I didn't think you'd come. Please, you have to listen. I'm working with the feds. I can get my sentence reduced. We can still—" "Stop, Damien," I said. My voice was as cool as the glass between us. "I didn't come here for an apology. I didn't even come here for closure. I came here to give you something." He looked hopeful for a split second. A predator always looks for a crack in the armor. "What?" I leaned in, my breath fogging the glass slightly. I held up my wrist. I wasn't wearing my father's watch. I was wearing a sleek obsidian smartwatch, the latest prototype from my new firm. "I'm releasing the Damien patch next week," I said. He frowned. "The what?" "It's an AI-driven security layer designed specifically to detect social engineering. It identifies patterns of behavior that mirror yours, the perfect coincidences, the mirrored interests, the rapid escalation of intimacy. I've turned your entire betrayal into an algorithm. You aren't a man anymore, Damien. You're a bug report." The hope in his eyes died, replaced by a cold, hollow realization. "Did you ever love me?" he rasped, the question sounding small in the vast, echoing room. I stood up, smoothing the front of my blazer. I didn't answer him immediately. "I loved the man I thought you were," I said. "But that man never existed. He was just a ghost I used to build a better version of myself." I hung up the phone. I didn't look back as the heavy steel doors buzzed open for me. As I walked out into the sunlight, my phone buzzed with a notification. Ariadne Foundation, 3rd startup funded this morning. Damien thought he was the one mapping my empire. He never realized he was just the foundation I was building it on. Thank you for listening to my story. Do you think Damien deserved what he got? Let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to Scarlet Stories for more revenge stories like this.